Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. Look at all these gorgeous authors I'm surrounded by. I am the luckiest woman on the planet, as long as I don't melt in this heat. We have Elizabeth Donne, Emily Royal, Maeve Greyson, E.L. Johnson, and C.H. Admirand with us today. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's good to be here.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
So, since we have so many of you, we're going to dive right in and get right to the books. Let's start with you, E.L. Yours is Winter's Crown, and this is part of the Winter's Murders series. Can you tell us about this one?
It is. Thank you. It is book 2 in the series, and it starts right after the Battle of Lincoln has happened. So it's set during the anarchy, so 12th century England, where there's King Stephen and his queen versus Empress Maud in the fight for the English crown. And I love it. My main character, Bronwyn, is a cook. She's a refugee. She's fallen in with the Empress's camp. And it follows a historical event. So we've had book one, the historical event was the Battle of Lincoln. And book 2, the historical event, was Empress Maud's attempt of having a coronation as queen in London that summer in June. And my thought for this book was, well, what do you do if you are going to be, crowned queen, but you don't have a crown? Well, what do you do then? And so that was my idea. And so because I'm a mystery writer, what I do, I think about, what if scenarios, and what do you have an amateur sleuth, who's not highborn, she's not a noblewoman, she's a cook. And she's, in her late teens, early 20s, and she's got to do this. So no spoilers, but there's one little love triangle. There's frenemies. It's really fun. And I love putting characters in situations where there's a rich historical setting and background and things that could have happened, but you have to do a lot of research. And so for this, I was reading about, contemporary resources and translations of like how the rulers were depicted at that time. And so I know that, Empress Maud was really disliked by the male, writers of the time period, whereas Queen Matilda, King Stephen, they were, not as hated. So really fun to write, really interesting. I hope people read it and let me know what you think. And that's it. Thanks.
I love books like that. I love when you bring history alive, and I get to learn things that I didn't either know or didn't hold on to the first time they passed through my synth of a brain. But because when you attach it to a story, it has so much more meaning, and then I get interested in the historical figures as well. Now I love this. It sounds fantastic. And this is a long-running series, correct?
It is. I might have been a bit ambitious. I pitched a 7-book series, so this is book 2. I'm currently editing book 3 and finishing writing book 4. So wish me luck.
Awesome.
Awesome. You've got this.
Yep, it sounds like so much fun.
Thank you.
And speaking of long-running series. Look at me rolling your eyes. The next book that came out this week is CH's book, and it's The Duke's Champion, and it's book 13 in the Duke's Card series.
I didn't have my cheat sheet today. I should have printed it bigger, though, because I did turn in book 14 a couple weeks ago, and stuff's been happening, so please excuse me if I sound disjointed, but Seamus Flaherty, it's his turn. He's the oldest of the 4 Flaherty brothers, and he's actually been tied up in knots over the heroine since before this series started. He was one of the escorts. Oh yeah, from I think it was book 3 in the Lords of Vice series. He was one of the escorts assigned to take Lady Calliope and her lady's maid down to Sussex. And stuff happens, it's icy, the carriage falls over on its side, and he's instrumental in pulling the ladies out to safety. So he's positive that he's like hero, and she only remembers the first time. It's more like, I hate to say emotional rescue, but it really was for her, because she was basically kicked to the curb from a former employer, and Garrahan just happens to be there and helps her up off the sidewalk. She ends up back at the Duke's townhouse where the cook and the housekeeper take care of her, and she ends up going to the Lake District with the Duke and his family, and that's how she ends up as lady's maid to Lady Calliope, who's a friend of the Duke's younger sister. So there's like that connection there, but she only remembers the first one, and Seamus just doesn't understand. It's not all the bravado and the strength and the everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that Garahan helped her out of a really tough emotional situation. So Seamus doesn't get that. He's just jealous. But Mary Kate is so happy to be in her new job working with the Viscountess that she's just like happy all the time, and she's smiling all the time, and she's really pretty, and she attracts a lot of attention. And the local new farrier has decided that's going to be the woman that I want. Well, so stuff happens, and then more stuff happens, and Seamus is injured, shot twice in the back, but high enough that it didn't really damage too much. That was in Dermot O'Malley's book. I think that was book 10. Yeah. I don't remember. Sorry.
It's okay.
I've had a lot of stuff go on lately. But eventually he realizes that she hasn't abandoned him after he got shot. She was actually there the whole time taking care of him because he wouldn't let anybody else in the room. But then he calls her a faithless woman, says other not nice things, and tells her to leave, and she leaves. It's that jealousy thing. You know how you have like a character trait that you really work really hard on and you really want to try to overcome, and then stuff hits the fan, and then you're like, oh crap, I did it again.
Right back into those threads.
So that's his problem in this book. He has other problems, but I'm not going to go there. But anyway, stuff happens, and eventually after a couple of attempted kidnappings, and then there's like attempted murder, and there's lots of stuff going on. But anyway, happily ever after always happens in my books because life's too short to focus on the sad stuff. So, but
amen.
I guess that's it. I actually remembered more stuff this time.
No, you did fantastic. You did fantastic. And it's interesting that you said about those character traits that you try to work through, because I think it was Melanie Harlow that had said once in a talk that we're not our characters' therapists, and I think it's so tempting to like fix the stuff that they're all broken about, because you know where they're broken, and you know what you're like. I'm Deus Ex Machina, I can fix all of this stuff, but you have to let them go through it on the page, and you have to let the readers go through it with them for it to be a compelling.
And then they fight against it the whole time. I'm like, oh God, you're such a man. Can't you just like listen?
Shake it off, man. Let's go. We know where this is going to end. Let's get there.
Let's just go.
Fun. And how many books? I mean, there's still at least 3 more, aren't there?
Right. The book 14's in my editor's queue. I started book 15, and then there's book 16, and then I'm gonna cry. But
everybody deserves a good Joan Wilder cry when you get to the end. So awesome. Well, the next book that came out this week is Emily's book, and it's The Lion and the Unicorn. I love the title for this one mostly because
great cover.
Who doesn't love a unicorn?
Oh, and the hero is like proper tasty.
We passed that way, but did you see this dude? He knows some stuff.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us about this? Which is obviously a Lion's Den book. Can you tell us about this?
It's my 4th book in the Lion's Den series. I just love the series. I've had so much fun writing all the books, and it's kind of the direct sequel to the 3rd Lion's Den book that I wrote. And in the third book, the heroine, who kind of had a horrible life, she was like forced to work in a brothel by this sort of evil man, and she had her baby daughter taken away from her. And in that's the Lion of the Ton, and she gets reunited with her daughter Clara, who's now all grown up. And I wanted to write Clara's story, so the Lion and the Unicorn is Clara's story. So she's got this obviously sordid past. She's spent her life in kind of London's slums, so she's had like a really, really hard life, and she's suddenly thrust into high society. She's the stepdaughter of a duke who's a very stern man, but he loves her. She's got these twin stepbrothers who adore her, and obviously a mother who's like a real mama bear and is really fierce and protects her. And her mother is preparing her for her first London season. But Clara, because she kind of hasn't got any kind of expertise in the rules of society, she's a real fish out of water. And she's bullied by the other young women. She just feels out of place. She doesn't know what's the right fork to use at the dinner, so she's really struggling. So her mother starts to take her to a few kind of local balls in Northumberland, where the country estate is, and at this ball where she's getting bullied by lots of the kind of bitchy young women, she bumps into this Highlander who just walks into the ball, who happens to be staying with his cousin locally. And because all the women are like, oh, look at him, you know, son of a laird, you know, looks pretty good in his full Highland. But he's got eyes for none but Clara, because he spots this kind of quiet woman in the corner who's, well, she's not quiet. She sort of says what she thinks, but she's being a bit downtrodden by everyone else. So he kind of takes her under her wing a bit. So when everyone's like bitching at her, going, oh, you don't know which fork to use, he just picks up a chicken leg with his fingers and says, oh, this is better because it's less cutlery for the servants to have.
My hero.
So he's so heroic. And he falls in love with her. So he does the gallant thing and says to her father, oh, can I court her? And, you know, her stepfather. And he's quite strict, but he's like, oh, okay, you know. And he realizes that she's really, really uncomfortable in society. So he says, okay, look, what I'm going to do before you make any decision as to whether you want to be with me, I'm going to take you to my Highland home. I'll show you the home that I love, show you my family. And if you still like it, then perhaps we can be together. I'm not going to force you to do anything that you don't want. So he takes her to his home with her mother as chaperone. And they're having this evening meal, and Murdo, the Highlander, he's like the second son of the laird. So it's an impoverished estate. His older brother, the heir, is going to marry for heirs. So he's going to marry a good Highland lass. But Murdo has just been told, marry somebody with money because you've got to restore the coffers of the estate. So they're having dinner, and his brother's a bit kind of rude and standoffish, and Clara thinks there's something going on here. His brother sort of feels a little bit sort of, you know, bullied and a bit repressed. And then the laird walks in, drunk as a skunk. And he recognizes Clara's mother, who used to work in a brothel. The laird is just this horrible man who like rules the family with a rod of iron and a fist of steel. And he just says, I do not want a whore in my house, and I do not want a daughter of a whore in my family. And thinking about what CH said, Murdo is like intensely loyal to his clan. His father was a bully, and he bullies and represses the whole family. So what does Murdo do? Murdo basically says, yeah, okay, Dad, I don't want her in my life. So yeah, everything absolutely falls back. He royally messes things up. So Clara's mother, total mama bear, she's like, right, that's it. I'm leaving. Me and my daughter are leaving. We have nothing to do with this toxic
That is
family.
a throw the Kindle moment.
Yeah.
Yes,
basically, yes, he royally messes it up. So she takes Clara home and says, don't worry, you got your London season to look forward to. And Clara was like, Mother, I do not want a London season. I have been totally heartbroken by this man. He's ripped me to shreds. I'm being bullied by everyone else. I cannot cope with a London season. I'm just going to get prejudiced and, you know, judged and everything. So Clara's mother said, okay, well, I found love in the Lion's Den. So my old friend, Bessie Dove Lyon, is going to put you right. She's going to sort you out. She's going to find the man for you who's going to love you for who you are, because that's what she did for me with your stepfather. So they toddle off to the Lion's Den kind of a month or so later. And there's this, the challenge is like a kind of obstacle course type challenge to determine a man's virility and gallantry. And it's like a masked obstacle course. So Clara is standing there veiled in the gallery at the Lion's Den. And the final leg of the obstacle course is they have to climb up to the gallery, and the winner will then hop over on the balustrade and declare his love for the fair maiden. So this masked unicorn is the one that climbs up, and he hops onto the balcony, and they all cheer and go, brilliant. So Clara's like, great, I've got my man. And Mrs. Dove Lyon says, right, unicorn, take off your mask. Fair maiden, lift your veil. And because mask comes off, veil comes off. And guess who the winner is? Guess who?
I can't even hardly imagine.
Yeah, it's Murdo, the Highlander. So Clara's just like utterly horrified because they've signed all the contract. She's got to go through with the marriage, and she just... broken her heart. She's determined to hate him and make his life miserable, and this toxic family that she's now shackled to. So yeah, there you have it.
Wow. Oh, that sounds like so much fun. And I want to figure out like
a good one.
It all gets solved, and you know how he gets past his throw the Kindle moment and all those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, it's I've had quite a few reviews of like, I loved Murdo at first, and then he just behaved so badly. I just hated him for the rest of the book.
But that's hard, right? Because, you know, like, especially if you're feeling a little off, like I find myself wanting to like lean into characters where like we're going to smooth this out, you know, like this just doesn't need to be as hard as it is, but it does because you need the not the angst, but you need the tension to be able to like really, really lean into it and get
And it's
attached.
that's the actual thing. He's got this. His kind of trait is his intense loyalty to his clan, and he's been kind of browbeaten by this father who's kind of basically a single parent because his sort of poor mum died really early. So he's been browbeaten by this man all of his life, and he fights against it, and then he reverts to type and does what his father tells him. So yeah, that obviously messes things up for him.
Yeah, because the bad characteristics often have a good side. You know, like there's a balance.
Yeah.
A balance.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nice.
Well, the next book that came out this week is Maeve's book, and it's Grace's Saving, and it's book 3 in the 7 Suitable Sisters series. Grace, can you tell us about, or Maeve, can you tell us about this one?
Well, Grace is actually the 4th sister, but it is the 3rd book. I kind of write them out of order. But Gracie is a tomboy. She loves to wear her buckskins. She loves her dogs. She's got 6 or 7 foxhounds. And then she's got this one floppy-eared dog named Gastric because, needless to say, when he eats some things, he has flatulence issues. And she uses him as a weapon. When one of her sisters makes her mad, she'll feed Gastric stuff and then have him sleep right by their bed. So, but anyway. But Grace figures she's safe this book because the London season is over. It's summertime and they're all heading to the country, to the manor house. So she figures I'm home free at least until the next season, you know, because my brother, you know, all the sisters have to marry for love or chance. The Duke of Broadmere doesn't get his full inheritance. He gets a percentage each time a sister marries. So needless to say, he's pushing all the sisters to get married. He wants all the money. And anyway, they get to the country house. Of course, Grace puts on her favorite buckskins, and Chance about has a fit. He says, you can only wear them on our land. Don't go near any of the roads. Don't go near town. If anybody sees you, your favorite buckskins are going to the dustbin. It's fine, whatever, you know, absolutely ignoring him. And she rides off. Well, she comes upon a pair of 7-year-old twins, Connor and Sissy. And their poor little dog is tangled up in honeysuckle and can't get loose. So she helps get them loose and everything. And Connor, the little boy, he just falls in love with Grace.
Well, yeah.
But they have to make a deal. They make a pact because the twins were actually on Broadmere land and they weren't supposed to be. And they're always getting in trouble. So because they are the younger siblings of the Duke of Wolfborn, and which everybody calls him Wolf. And the Duke of Wolfborn, he's just had a terrible time finding people to keep up with these twins who run off every nanny, every babysitter, every governess because they're rotten, but they're sweet, just rotten. And but anyway. So they make a deal. Grace doesn't want anybody knowing about her buckskins, and the twins don't want anybody knowing that they got off of Big Brother's land. So they make a pact. Fine, we'll keep each other's secrets. Well, so she's taking them home. She's letting them ride her horse, and she's leading her horse. Well, here comes Big Brother. Here comes the Duke. Yeah, and he's by this time they're back on Wolfborn land, and here comes the Duke, and he's beside himself because he doesn't know what to do with 7-year-old siblings. And he was scared to death that they were hurt, but now that he knows they're not hurt, he's about ready to go. And he comes up, and so Grace tries to pull her hat down real low, and she kind of hides her hands, you know, because she doesn't want anybody to know that she's not a servant. Well, he accuses her of trespassing.
Oh, come on.
Yes. And
these men.
His men accuses her of trespassing and says that she needs to remove her hat when she's in the presence of her betters. Well, that just sets her off because Grace has a temper. And once she gets started, once she unleashes her demons, she can't stop. So she rips the hat off. Her long blonde hair unfurls. And she tells him off and gives him down the road so hard, he's speechless. And he's backing up from her because he's like, get me away from this woman. And then as she rides off, she taunts him. She said, "Now you be sure and get a hold of my brother, the Duke of Broadmere, because I know you don't have the guts just to deal with me. I know you're going to have to go tattling, And then Connor informs his big brother. He says, "I'm going to marry her because she's beyond compare." The 7-year-old. And then the second time they meet isn't much better because they meet in a gift shop. And the Duke just gets tongue-tied all over again. And because he really is attracted to her, but he realized he just showed his butt. And, and now he doesn't really know how to make up for it. Plus, there's the slight problem that he has been betrothed by contract since he was 7 years old.
Oh, man.
Well, if he tries to get out of it, he's been threatened with a breach of promise suit, which is very expensive. So he's kind of trapped with this other woman of course, she's a total harpy. And he really wants Grace. And Grace grudgingly admits that he might be handsome enough to interest her. So then they have to work through all these things, and then it's a happily ever after.
Of course it is.
Of course.
That's what we read.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, that sounds like great fun. And so then we still have 4 more sisters.
Yes.
Nice.
And the brother.
That's right.
He's got to have his story. Once he survives getting all 7 married off, he's got to have his story. I figured by then he's earned it. So,
Nice.
Awesome. Well, the next book that came out this week is Elizabeth's book, and it's Verity's Choice, and it's book 3 in the Ladies of Monroe.
That's it.
And this one's Sweet Dreams, is that right?
That's it, yeah.
Can you tell us about this one?
So hugs and kisses and longings and things, but no bedroom scenes. Yep.
Sizzle, no steak.
Okay.
Although there's some good meat in there.
Yeah.
So in the second book of the series, we've already met the main character in the third book, which is William Cole. William Cole got himself into a bit of a love triangle in the second book, but he's the one who lost. So he loses what he thinks is the love of his life in the second book to somebody else. So at the beginning of the third book, he has skedaddled back home from Monroe, which is where the series is set. Monroe is a fictional place. It's like the London of the North. And he skedaddles back from the big city, back home again. His father has told him he must come home now and settle down. And that's what he was hoping to do. But of course, he didn't win hand of fair maiden. So he wants to very much go into the military. So the period which this is set in, am I hearing bells?
An angel just got its wings.
So he really wants to go into the military. It's set during the time of the Napoleonic Wars. Civil War with America Civil War, International War with America has just ended. And so he really wants to go to the military. His father says, no, you're just going to go and walk around prancing about your uniform and impressing the ladies to get a serious job. And the local vicar is going to be retiring. You can be the vicar. And while you're at it, you can marry the vicar's daughter. Everything with wings is joining me today.
You're doing great, though. Just keep on going. Come on.
So he's like, well, I don't really want to marry the vicar's daughter. I remember her. We were childhood friends, and she was this mousy little thing, and who wants that? And she had this weird interest in insects. So that brings us to Verity. Verity is the younger daughter by far, and she pretty much lives by herself because both her siblings are married and everybody else in the neighborhood has either gotten married or they've gone off to university or they've got a job in Monroe or something. She's been sort of left behind. And she's occupied herself with a very, very deep interest in science, which just makes her mother want to sigh because what kind of young girl's interested in science, especially insects, no less. And Verity likes spending time at the pond, catching them with her net and sketching them. And she's got a whole room papered with sketches of insects.
Oh, wow.
So, yes. So her mom despairs of her a little bit. And then along comes William back home and being told by his father, just go in there and say hello at least. Tell them you're back in the neighborhood and spend some time. You'll see she's changed. She's nice. I must just stop here for a second and say why Verity is so special for me. You know, we're in a time period where people crave a feisty heroine. We want a woman who can stand her ground and so on. But I've got a lot of friends who are quite reserved, and I sort of wanted to write a book in honor of them, because we'll know, lady, that reserved does not mean weak. It does not necessarily even mean shy. It just means that you're just not noisy. You know, you sort of keep things to yourself, and that's what Verity is. So Verity is very strong, very opinionated, but because she's a vicar's daughter, she's learned to just keep things to herself. But she has strong opinions, and she certainly practices this odd little habit of hers of sketching insects. So when William comes along and sees her, and of course she's bloomed and she's fascinating, they meet accidentally at the pond instead of at the house. And so he sees her in her, like, call her natural state, which is at her happiest. And so he sees her at her most glowing state.
Not mousy.
And he also sees that she's willing to do interesting things. She's not a boring little vicar's daughter. Unfortunately, he hasn't learned very much from his life experience. He's very vain, he's very shallow, and he thinks himself just the greatest catch that ever lived. And she says to him, I'm looking for something more. I'm not interested in I might would be your friend, that'd be lovely, but I'm not interested in somebody who's not going to be a real man and have something more to him than just wit and banter and a good looking uniform one day. So after a few more visits with the family, he gives up. I must just say there's a very important thing that happens. He actually tries to impress her by giving her a gift. And the gift tells her that he didn't get her at all. And so she just decides, well, I was right in my choice not to even consider his courtship. And then we think that's the end of the story. Well, the end, chapter 3 or something. No happily ever after. So her parents say, listen, if you're not going to marry him, we've got to find you a husband who's going to take you as you are. And you are interesting. We want you to marry somebody who's going to take you as you are, insects and all. And you're not going to find that in a small, sleepy little town. Off you go to your sister in Munro. Meanwhile, not marrying the vicar's daughter means that William's father is now willing to consider finding him a commission in the military. So Verity is going completely out of her comfort zone into a big city where they're going to give her a whole new wardrobe with all ruffles and things that is not her scene. No pond, no insect. That's the worst thing she can possibly imagine. And he's getting his dream come true. He gets his uniform. He gets to impress the ladies, and they reconnect in Munro. Unfortunately for him, he's stuck in a love triangle again, the losing party again, because who does she meet in Munro but a gentleman who's part of the Entomological Society.
Oh, cool.
Shares her love for insects and invites her to join him for a talk about bugs of Egypt. Anyway, cut a long story short, Verity and William agree to be friends and help each other find love. But the more they help each other try and find love, the more they discover they actually really kind of like each other more than just friends.
Oh,
but by this time, we've got a third party who's invested, and the war takes William off to no other than Waterloo. And does he come back safely? Well, are you going to have to read to find out? Who does she marry? Who survives the war? So, yeah, it's kind of like a coming of age for the gentleman this time instead of for the lady. He's got a lot of growing up to do, and she's got to learn that if she wants what she wants, she's going to be true to herself. And that means even though she's quite reserved, she's going to have to stand her ground and say what she wants out of life. So it's a kind of book where you don't actually know right until the very end what she's going to choose.
Oh, it sounds like so much fun. And a heroine who knows her own heart and is trying to figure that out. And a hero with a strong character arc is fantastic when they have to actually.
I read an article the other day with a lovely quote that said that love triangles are not so much about two lovers, but about two sides of the hero that are fighting with each other. And so when you decide who you choose to love, you're also deciding which part of yourself you're going to emphasize and be true to, and so on.
Oh,
So
cool.
I think
Oh,
that's
I
very
love
true
that.
of this book as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Oh, I love thinking of it like
The
that.
end.
Fantastic. Oh, so we were supposed to have time to talk about taking off your clothes when we're writing love scenes, but apparently that's not going to happen.
Anybody volunteer?
Mia looks so scared now. So we'll do that next time.
I'm one of those reserve ladies.
I did also want to mention that Siri James had a book that came out this week. It's The Secrets of Thorndale Manor, and it is book 2 in the, I have to look at the thing because it's a lot of words. The Audacious Sisterhood of Smoke and Fire. Like, it's a really cool series.
I like that title.
The Audacious Sisterhood of Smoke and Fire. So I will make sure I put the link to that and the link to all of these books in the comments so you can grab them if you want to, and we will talk about the peeling layers off when we love scenes another time. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. It's a delight to hear about your stories every week. And I'm going to say my spiel because it's true every week. It's even to grab your Dragonblade books when they're pre-order or release because they're the very best deal, cheaper than a bad cup of coffee. So you want to grab them then. And if you don't get them then, you can always get them in Kindle Unlimited. So thanks again, ladies, for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.